Tauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. US President Donald Trump has ruled out an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine after his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, insisting that only a direct peace agreement can end the war, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed he will meet President Trump in Washington on Monday, calling it a crucial step in diplomatic efforts. Ukraine says Moscow launched 85 drones and a ballistic missile overnight, just hours after Putin and Trump's talks ended without a ceasefire deal. Kyiv reports shooting down 61 drones as strikes hit 4 frontline regions. A blast at a factory in Russia's Ryazan region has killed 11 people and injured 130 people, with rescuers still searching through the rubble. According to the Emergencies Ministry, Governor Pavel Malkov has said that the incident was triggered by a fire inside of a workshop about 320 kilometers southeast of Moscow. The U.S. State Department has announced that it has halted all visitor visas for individuals from Gaza, while conducting a full review of the recently issued temporary medical humanitarian visas. The decision was made today as part of an effort to reassess procedures and security measures in USA. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that Chinese President Xi Jinping assured him that China would not invade Taiwan during his term. According to a Fox News interview, the Chinese embassy reiterated that Taiwan remains the most important issue in Sino-U.S. ties, while Taiwan strongly rejected Beijing's sovereignty claims. Canadian Labour Minister Patty Hajdu urged Air Canada and the Canadian Union of Public Employees to intensify talks after over 10,000 unionized flight attendants walked off the job. Disrupting travel for more than 100,000 passengers, Air Canada suspended flights and warned against airport visits as the strike escalated over pay disputes. Hurricane Erin, the first of the 2025 Atlantic season, has intensified into a Category 4 storm with winds of 145 meters per hour. According to the U.S. National Hurricane Center, the NHC has warned that Erin will bring heavy rainfall and dangerous swells impacting Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Turks and Caicos, and reaching the Bahamas, Bermuda, and U.S. East Coast next week. Spain is battling 14 major wildfires that have killed 7 people and burned an area equivalent to the size of London, with authorities warning of unfavorable conditions amid a heat wave and strong winds. Portugal has activated the EU assistance mechanism as southern Europe faces one of its worst summers for wildfires in 20 years, according to media reports. UK, France and Germany will host a high-level video call on 17th of August, tomorrow, with Kyiv's allies in what it is being called a coalition of the willing. The LEC says the meeting, led by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, President Emmanuel Macron and Chancellor Friedrich Merz, will focus on next steps towards peace in Ukraine. The call comes just a day before President Volodymyr Zelensky travels to Washington following the US-Russia summit. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Raymond Vickery. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joins us live from Washington. Thank you, Raymond, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, what do you think that they are going to achieve or plan during this meeting of the coalition?
Well, thanks very much for having me. In order to wage peace, you have to wage it like war, in the sense that you have to have a strategy, you have to have allies, you have cooperation. Unfortunately, the tack taken by President Trump has been exactly the opposite of that, and that is a real estate developer's transactional approach, that he and another great man, can get together and solve the problem. You know, he said he was going to do this on day one of his presidency and bring peace to Ukraine. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. We're happy to see the impetus toward talks and peace, but this is no way to go about it. And so what's going to happen is that the Europeans, the so-called coalition of the willing, are going to try to get together along with President Zelensky in having a coalition which will be able to wage peace, not by just simply making a deal with Putin, but putting enough pressure on him so that he'll come to the table. This is a very unfortunate development, really, in my view, because what's happened is you've given Putin legitimacy after the worst transgression of the UN Charter in 80 years, the invasion of another country, the imperialistic approach to international affairs. He's been treated as an equal by President Trump. President Trump had said he wanted to stop the killing. That was his number one objective. With all of us can agree with that. But what has happened is the whole business about ceasefire has been dropped. So what is going on, it seems to me, is really sort of as you would Plan B, and that is to get together a coalition of the willing, which can wage peace in a realistic way as opposed to what President Trump has been trying to do.
And Raymond, building on your answer, what is your take on President Trump's bold moves about pursuing Nobel Peace Prize? Do you think these peace efforts are genuine part of his pursuing Peace Prize?
Well, there's no question about it. The man is an egomaniac, if you will, narcissistic maniac, some have said. And he wants self-aggrandizement, and a Nobel Peace Prize, in his view, would be a part of that aggrandizement. It's unfortunate. You know, President Reagan, who was a good Republican, used to say, you know, you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets the credit. And that's exactly the opposite of what President Trump approach is. He wants the credit first, even if he doesn't accomplish anything. He did this in regard to India, Pakistan. He tried it in regard to Africa. And in his view, it'd be a crowning achievement. But, you know, I'm all in favor of giving him any prize if he really could have a strategy and a means to get peace, because the killing is terrible, and it can lead to worse consequences. World War I started this way, kind of sleepwalking into it, which led to World War II. We don't want that again, so it's good that he's involved, but this is no way to go about it, in my judgment. Other great democracies like India, in Europe, Japan, need to band together and try to bring enough pressure in regard to Putin and Russia to at least stop the killing.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Raymond, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. European leaders are invited to come along to the Washington meeting between President Trump and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky tomorrow. No, on Monday. The two will meet on 18th of August, days after Trump's summit in Alaska with Russia's President Vladimir Putin ended without a ceasefire deal. Zelensky has called his 90-minute phone call with President Trump long and substantive, backing the U.S. president's proposal for a trilateral format involving Ukraine, America, and Russia. President Trump briefed NATO and European leaders on his talks, saying President Putin wanted a full agreement rather than a temporary ceasefire. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, NATO's Mark Rutte, and leaders from France, Germany, Poland, Italy, Finland, and Britain has joined the call. Now we go back to Raymond Vickery. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Raymond, for staying with us. Now, given the EU's stance that, some of them, they said that they are relieved that nothing came out of it because they were expecting the worst. What's your take on that?
Well, that's a pretty low bar, isn't it, for success? that President Trump didn't give away Ukraine, which certainly was a possibility. And when I say give it away, basically that means stop all the arms shipments and the ability of Ukraine to defend itself. So that's a very low bar, but thank goodness that didn't happen. I hope that the European leaders, along with other leaders, as I say, India needs to get involved. India has great leverage with the Russians, Japanese, and others also. But it's going to require a cooperative effort across the board rather than relying on President Trump. What I fear is that on Monday, President Trump feeling that he has not been able to achieve what he said he was going to do on day one, much less 6 months later, is just going to try to offload the problem entirely onto Zelensky and the Europeans. Then he'll say it wasn't my fault. I tried and I didn't get it. Hopefully that won't happen. At least President Trump has consistently said that he's in favor of stopping the killing, and which is job number one. But it seems to me that 1994 Budapest Agreement, in which Russia, the United States, the UK guaranteed the sovereignty of Ukraine in exchange for giving up its nuclear weapons, has largely been forgotten, much less the Charter of the United Nations, which prohibits the kind of invasion, imperialistic approach which Russia has shown. But hope springs eternal, and hopefully on Monday, President Trump will remain involved, the U.S. will remain involved, and that saner heads on both sides will be able to move us toward a comprehensive peace.
And Raymond, now given that the EU's firm stance that Russia cannot dictate Ukraine's NATO or EU path, how do you think Ukraine is preparing diplomatically for potential Russian retaliation?
Well, they're doing everything they can to get the advanced Patriot missile anti-drone system. I think Zelensky has the message loud and clear that they have to depend upon themselves. Ukraine depended on others in 1994. That hasn't happened. Indeed, President Trump in his first time was impeached for trying to shake down Ukraine in order to get supposed political dirt on President Biden. So I think he has the message loud and clear, and I think the Europeans do too, that if they're going to be able to deal with Russia, one, they have to keep the United States involved because of the advanced arms we have, but they have to rely upon themselves and others, such as India, South Africa, to try to bring pressure on Russia to back off. China may have a role to play in this as well, although China and Russia seem to be joined at the hip in terms of going forward. So it's a message of self-reliance, unfortunately, rather than coalition and unity versus the Russian invasion.
And going back to my first question, Raymond, some voices we've heard that some American citizens were relieved because they thought Trump might give up Alaska instead. Do you think that you've also heard these kind of voices in U.S.?
Well, I think that there are people who are very concerned that President Trump doesn't really understand history in the purchase of Alaska from Russia, and the fact that there are many in Russia now who say it was a bad deal, a forced deal, and so that that was their territory. The idea that you would, at this point, give up Alaska to Russia is not a starter in terms of any widespread view. It would create really an uprising for that to happen, and it is extremely unlikely. Nevertheless, the symbolism of being able to welcome Putin as an equal on Alaska soil, which some in Russia have claimed as their own, is a very bad message to send. It's one that Putin loves, but it's not good for world peace.
Thank you very much, Raymond Vickery, for sharing that insight throughout our news. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that bilateral trade between the United States and Russia has grown by 20% since the Trump administration took office. Speaking in Alaska after his summit with President Donald Trump, Putin said the following.
Bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration. We see that Arctic cooperation is also very possible.
The comments also come amid U.S. penalties on India for continuing to buy Russian oil, with tariffs doubled to 50% starting August 27th. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Raymond Vickery. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Thank you, Raymond, for staying with us. Now, for some people, this might be a surprise that U.S., while imposing heavy tariffs on India as buying Russian oil, punishment as buying Russian oil. But then now we see that U.S., since Trump took office, President Putin said that they have 20%, they have increased 20%. Was this a surprise for many over there as well?
Well, President Putin, just like President Trump, is very adept at trying to create a reality which is not actual. The trade between the United States and Russia is minuscule. It's about $6-7 billion as compared to U.S.-India trade of about 200 billion or so if you count in services. So it's very small, and it is unfortunate in regard to some crucial rare earth minerals that we got reliant on Russia. And it may be that there was a transaction which would show some increase from a very small base. But the reality is the United States has cut back on trade and has tried to impose sanctions. Now, having that been said, the sanctions on India are a different situation in the sense that 25% of it has to do with these reciprocal tariffs, which really have nothing to do with Russia. In regard to the Russian oil trade, that additional 25% tariff, which has been talked about, it has not been imposed. Yes. And the United States has taken a very inconsistent position. First of all, along with European allies saying, well, you could buy Russian oil if you didn't buy it above a $60 a barrel cap. That was exceeded, is exceeded, and there is oil trade. What needs to happen is two great democracies, the U.S. and India, need to work together in terms of how to end the Ukrainian war. Will Yes. oil be a part of that? It could be a part of it. But the idea that you're just going to take a sledgehammer to India with an additional 25% on top of a 25% reciprocal Therefore,
Yes.
having a 50% tariff and cutting off trade essentially is a non-starter and has done more damage to the U.S.-India relationship in 24 hours
Yes.
than we were able to correct in 30 years of work.
Yes. Thank you so much, Raymond Vickery, for joining us and sharing your insight. Always great hearing from you. Thank you very much. Now we move on. In Moscow, residents reacted with cautious optimism to the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, which ended without a peace plan for Ukraine. Many saw the meeting itself as a positive step, offering hope that dialogue could ease tensions even if no agreement was reached. Some viewed the European response as proof of the summit's significance, while others stressed that confrontation between the US and Russia is too costly to continue. The general sentiment among locals was that talks, while limited, still mark a chance for improvement. Let's listen in to some citizens.
С одной стороны, что то, что вот саммит вот вчера был, как бы, я так думаю, что что-то пойдет в лучшую в сторону России, в сторону народа и в сторону тех людей, которые воюют. Вот так вот. Может что-то как-то прекратится, вот это все. Может быть. Вот. Ну, но опять же не факт. Вот.
Тоже. Я, конечно, вне политики, но мне бы очень хотелось, чтобы все люди жили в мире и не делились бы там нации, Украина, там Россия, чтобы все дружили. Я вот только за это. Спасибо.
Ну, если посмотреть то, как истерически отнеслись европейские страны к этому, я думаю, это многое значит.
Ну, я считаю хорошо, что в принципе разговаривают, и в принципе, ну, я не думаю, что у нас наладится отношения прям настолько хорошо, что мы стали союзниками, но в любом случае противостояние очень дорого обходится, мне кажется, сверхдержавам, чтобы это продолжать до бесконечности.
Now we move on. A fire and explosion at an industrial plant in Russia's Ryazan region has killed 11 people and injured 130 people, officials have confirmed today. This deadly blaze happened just yesterday. It broke out at a gunpowder workshop in the Elastic plant in the Shilovsky district, about 250 kilometers southeast of Moscow. 3 people were pulled alive from under the rubble, while 29 remain hospitalized, including several transferred to Moscow for treatment. On this, regional authorities have declared Monday a day of mourning, with flags lowered and public events cancelled. Investigators have opened a probe into the cause. It was the second deadly blast at the plant in recent years. The last was on an explosion in 2021, which killed 17 workers. Now we move on to Gaza. In Gaza, starvation claimed the lives of 11 people, including a child in the last 24 hours, according to the territory's health ministry. This brings the total hunger-related deaths to Gaza in Gaza to 251 people. Director General Munir al-Bursh warned that 40,000 people, infants, are currently suffering from severe malnutrition amid critical food shortages, as Israel's war and restrictions on aid have made humanitarian assistance scarce. On the other hand, the U.S. State Department has announced that it is halting all visitor visas for individuals from Gaza. The move comes as officials conduct a full and thorough review of the procedures used to issue a limited number of temporary medical and humanitarian visas in recent days. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Ali M. Abushbak. He's a Middle East Affairs researcher, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you, Ali, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, how does this U.S. decision to halt visitor visas for people from Gaza impact the broader Israel-Palestine dynamics?
Thank you, Suma, for having me. The thing is, let me just highlight it. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is completely miserable, while there is still the civilians, despite Israel allow for some truck to enter Gaza, but they are still suffering from the lack of humanitarian food aid and the humanitarian supplies that for essential for everyday life. Also, that today it's 11, more than 11 have been killed have been died because of malnutrition, and several of civilians couldn't find or secure their everyday food due to the loot of the humanitarian convoy while it's on the way to deliver it for the civilians. Unfortunately, as several of people they are gathering and loot this truck and convey for no reason, and that's make a huge unequal to disseminating the food for the civilians in Gaza, while also market it's flooded by some food and some supplies that unfortunately it's still the price of these supplies it's expensive. Yesterday, there, according to Israeli media outlets, there is Russia have been called Benjamin Netanyahu, and they are concerned about the plan for invaded Gaza and size the Gaza city like this. It's Israel control, hold the Gaza, and it will be under the control. So situation up to now, it's a difficult. The day before yesterday, the Palestinian political function, they met in Egypt and they discuss about the situation in Gaza and looking forward a method or approach to end this war in Gaza. But unfortunately, the meeting, the result of the meeting, it was a negative, and with it's a pessimistic result. There is up to now there is no glimmer of hope for the civilians in Gaza. Yesterday at night, Israel focused bombardment in Al Zaytun neighborhood, that northern east Gaza city, and several of civilians have been displaced from this neighborhood toward the Gaza city, to the center Gaza city in Rimal neighborhood, or some of them they left or they moved to southern part of Gaza. Situation on the ground is completely difficult, while also the journalist is still afraid of being targeted and assassinated by Israel after the Israel have been killed Al Jazeera staff in Gaza last week. Osama, there is no hope for the civilians about end the war and about the deal between Hamas and Israel, despite despite that there is a condemnation, a worldwide condemnation about the Israelis with regard to the Israelis' plan to invade Gaza and to departure the civilians from Gaza to other land, and looking forward a housed place or countries to accept the Palestinian as a refugee. Up to now, it's not fixed, and I confirm you, also, my Palestinian in Gaza, they are rooted in their land and they are not going to move or departure. Despite all of them, they are concerned and aware about the future. If Israel is going to invade Gaza and control the city, where they will go more than 5,500 civilians. They are under the risk of famine and starvation in Gaza city, as well as more than 1 million civilians. They are under the risk of displacement and to be a shelterless without home. And we are coming to the coming month is a winter that will exacerbate the situation in Gaza. It will make the situation, a humanitarian situation, more miserable. Several of a human aid truck is stuck in the border between Gaza and Egypt. Yeah, Osama.
Ali, do you think America can still be a mediator after all this?
There is no doubt for the America lost its credibility, and especially Donald Trump lost his credibility with regard mediating the peace process between Palestinian and Israel, and he's totally supporting Benjamin Netanyahu. And in this way, Palestinian, they are not trusting America as a mediator between them, and with regard the negotiation. There is on one hand, second hand, the condemnation by Russia. Maybe it will put Vladimir Putin on the frame as a significant mediator, and now maybe this coming time. The mediating between Palestinian and Israel in this kind of conflict, it will be it will not be dominated by America. Maybe Russia, it will be a significant player in this conflict. As a Palestinian, they have met the leader in Russia many times and discussed the situation in Gaza. So, in my opinion, maybe Russia, with the coming time, it will be a significant player and actor in this conflict. That will make America lost its dominating in this conflict as a significant mediator between Palestinian and Israel, and that make equality for demanding the right for the Palestinian as well as Israeli on the ground and for the peace process.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ali, for joining us and sharing your insight on the situation in Gaza. Now we move on to North America. Air Canada has canceled more than 600 flights, disrupting over 100,000 passengers. This comes as a strike deadline for its flight attendants loomed just hours away. The union representing 10,000 attendants has rejected binding arbitration and is demanding higher wages and compensation for unpaid work. Canada's jobs minister met with both sides on Friday and urged them to stay at the table to finalize a deal, but acknowledged little progress has been made. Here's what the Air Canada Executive Vice President had to say on this issue.
Abrupt work stoppages at airlines create chaos for travelers. We have all seen pictures of people sleeping at airports, stranded far from home, and uncertain of their travel. This will also impact our cargo operations and have consequences on the supply chain.
The potential strike set to begin just after midnight on Saturday would be the first by Air Canada attendants since 1985. This could hit the tourism sector hard at the peak of summer travel. Passengers at Toronto's Pearson Airport, the worst hit for cancellations, expressed frustration, but some voiced support for the attendants' demands. Let's listen into what a passenger had to say.
You know, if they cancel it, the flight, I mean, I have no choice, you know. I just wait and put my complaint.
At the heart of the dispute is compensation. Flight attendants say that they should be paid not just when planes are in motion, but also for boarding and other duties on the ground. Let's now listen into what a Montreal flight attendant said about the ongoing dispute.
So the compensation that they offered was minutes that were not the full amount of time that we actually are doing this groundwork that they say, and it was compensated at 50%. If I could just take the lowest, one of the lowest rates that we are paid, it's about $30 an hour, it would still be under minimum wage. How can we accept that? We're in Canada. The federal minimum wage is $17.75.
U.S. carriers like American and Alaskan Airlines have already agreed to such provisions, and Canadian crews are pushing for the same. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.